Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hope Arises. I'm Kim Jonovich. I'm so happy you're with us today. And what I want to tell you today is it's time to get your hopes up. It's time to get our hopes up. That is what the Lord's been saying to me for weeks now. The church is being called to action, and it's hard to be effective as the church, as the ecclesia, if we don't have hope, if we actually aren't focused on who our God is, that He's on the throne, He knows what He's doing, He's not wringing His hands wondering what to do. He's calling His people forward for a time such as this, for us to do what we were born to do. So that being said, I have an amazing guest with us today, someone who's very dear to my heart, Anthony Trimino. He's my brother-in-law. My brother, really, is how I describe him, because we've known each other for 26 years.
Yeah.
A long time. And he's married to my sister, Jennifer. He's going to tell you about his family and everything that's going on, but he's running for governor of California. If you don't know him, you need to. And I'm so excited you're going to be tuning in today. But I want him to start off, if you want to just give us like a 5-minute encapsulated message, because just in case any of you are tuning in and you can only hang on for 4 or 5 minutes, I need you to hear the most important parts. And then we're going to talk about the story and how Anthony got to where he is and what made him choose to do this and what the journey's been like for him.
Yeah, I'll just give my origin story and kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I feel called to do what I'm doing, and kind of how it all started. So I always say, it goes back to Esperanza, Cuba, where my grandfather was born. And so I'm the grandson of an immigrant who fled communist Cuba to come to the United States to pursue the American dream. My grandfather, during the uprising in Cuba, knew that he had to get out of there. So he filed for a visa, came to the United States, but he had to come alone because he couldn't afford the plane tickets for my grandmother, my 3 aunts. And so he ended up in Watts, South Central LA. I don't know if you guys know where Watts is, but my grandfather came from Cuba, ended up in Watts. And a guy gave him a job and a bed, and he worked for 6 months to save up enough money to send for my grandmother, who had my father at 6 months. And so my father was 6 months old, my grandmother and my 3 aunts. And they came, and my grandfather knew one thing: he was not going to depend on the government. He wanted to be independent. So he became an entrepreneur, started a company 60 years ago that still exists today. My father now runs it. Wow. And he instilled an entrepreneurial spirit in my father, who instilled it in me. And so at 18, I thought I would run the family business, and I often tell the story. My father gave me a job. 3 months later, he fired me. It was the best decision he ever made. I realize now what he wanted from me was he wanted me to find my own way, and to really do more than what he or my grandfather had done. And so best decision ever, because a year later, I ended up meeting your sister, my wife. We've been together 26 years. Married 25, we have 5 beautiful children, 4 biological, 1 adopted, and we were even foster care parents for a season of our life. And so a little over 20 years ago, I started a company. Jen and I were eating hamburger helper without the meat because we couldn't afford the ground beef. You know the story.
I love that story. And such a good story.
Such humble beginnings.
Yeah.
So a lot of people at that time would say we had nothing, but we knew we had everything because we had God and we had each other. So I started my company 20 years ago, and it's now considered one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America by Inc. magazine. I sit on the Forbes Agency Council. I always tell people, why is that important? Because California doesn't just need a governor. We need a CEO. We're talking about the 5th largest economy on the planet. And so in 2020, when we got the distinction of, being one of the fastest growing companies in America, I thought everything was perfect in my life. It was all aligned. Family was strong, marriage was strong, and business was better than ever. And then 2021, we started going back to what we considered normal. I started to learn what was being taught in our public school systems, critical race theory, gender studies, sexuality, all the things that were happening in California: crime, homelessness, the attack on our medical freedom. And I told my wife, we're out of here. We're going to Florida.
And I prayed a lot.
And like so many people
right, I know,
that are discouraged,
right.
Some have contemplated, many have left. We were on our way out, and Jen dug her heels in, probably because obviously she got a hold of you, and you guys were praying diligently against that. But God opened my eyes and kind of an eye-opening experience, because I saw California as a burning building that we needed to get away from. And when Jen dug her heels in and said, no, you need to really think about what we're leaving behind, I kind of had this spiritual encounter where I turned back, I looked back at California, and I did see a burning building.
Yeah.
But I saw 40 million people trapped inside, and I realized that we'd be walking away from family, friends, our church, employees. And then what would it show my boys? I'm trying to raise boys into men. What would it show them if we just up and left? So I arm wrestled with God for about a month. He won. I said to him, what do you want me to do about it? Never ask God a question that you don't want him to answer. He said, run back into that burning building and save as many people as you can. For us, that meant to run for governor, but not because I want to be a politician, because I truly believe that a politician is not going to go and undo the things and the problems that politicians have created here in California. So since June of last year, we've been fighting this good fight, going up and down the state, fighting with moms, parents, grandparents for school choice, against critical race theory, gender studies in our school, and obviously advocating for the restoration of the American dream that my grandfather came to the United States to pursue, that I believe is currently on life support, but I believe that we still have a very small window of opportunity to revive it. And that's what we're trying to do as a family.
So powerful. We've talked a lot about this as a family and in other settings, but really it's family that restores society. It's the very fabric of our society, right? And I can testify of what an amazing dad you are and husband. And don't go making me cry.
I'm sorry. Say it in the back so they can hear. Say it louder so the people in the back can hear. No.
But really, I feel like we need a father, and
I've said that. So people often ask me why do it, and I say, well, we need to elect somebody who takes this fight personal. So when you think about all the problems that are happening in California, right? The attack on small business, the attack on our family, the attack on our children, the attack on our churches. Well, this is all personal to me. There isn't one aspect of what's wrong with California that hasn't affected me personally.
Right.
Things that are happening in my school affect my children, my nephews, my nieces. They'll eventually affect my grandchildren. The things that are happening in business that are driving companies out, they affect me as a business owner. The attack on our churches. I was attending a church for 23 years that shut down for an entire year. And now I'm at a new church, and that church was scared to reopen. And so there's an attack on our church. And so if you think about what's happening, I used to think, and I always say, this is not about politics. This is good and evil, light and darkness, right? And I used to think that there was this spirit on California, and I was trying to figure out what spirit would be over California that would cause all this destruction, and to what end, to what benefit, who's benefiting from this? And I was actually at a dinner where Dennis Prager spoke. And Dennis Prager said, there's a spirit over California, but it's not one that seeks to benefit. It's the spirit of destruction. And the spirit of destruction doesn't need to benefit. It exists for the sole purpose of destroying. That is the net outcome. And so I believe that what's happening in California is the destruction of the family unit, the destruction of all morality. And we need somebody in there that takes this very, very personal, and it's not going to be a politician, it's going to be one of us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, the name of the program today is Call to Action. What do we do as believers? We have to do something, and I believe the church is the ecclesia, the believers. We're actually called to action, and that's what happened. You said yes. God called you, and you said yes. And I know you have a long history of doing that, God calling you and you saying yes. And I do want to go into that because it's so powerful. I feel like as I was preparing for today, the Lord was reminding me of David and Goliath, and I know we've had a bit of that conversation. And he really highlighted to me the fact that David killed Goliath because he had already killed the lion and the bear. So he had already built a history that his God was not only going to show up, but defeat the enemy, and he would have victory. He just had to hear the Lord and do what the Lord was telling him to do. And so he shows up that day. I was just reading the story again, and everybody's not knowing what to do with Goliath. 40 days Goliath came back and taunted the armies of God, right? And David shows up, and all he can think is, who are you to defy the armies of the living God? Like, I know my God. He just killed the lion and the bear, right? And I was thinking of you because I feel like you have this history with the Lord, probably since you were born. Callings and giftings are irrevocable. I feel like you've been called to be a leader in the marketplace. You've been called really to be a world changer, to shift atmospheres when you're there, and really to bring change, to be a change agent. And I know you've done that in family, in your own family, in our family. You've done that in the business, in the marketplace, all these things. But I kind of want you to just share some childhood experiences with the Lord, because I know He's had His hand on you your entire life.
Yes. Yeah, very true. So I often, I used to look at my life, all of these broken fragments of glass. And when you look at your life and you look at it too closely, all the trials and tribulations that you've been through in your life could look like broken shards of glass. They're all different color, they're all different shapes. And if you look too closely, that's all you see. And during this process, God has allowed me to pull back and to realize that those broken pieces of glass have all come together to create a mosaic.
Wow.
A beautiful mosaic that He crafted over 46 years. That individually those pieces mean nothing and they're hard to figure out, and you often wonder, why did I go through that? Why did I have to experience that? Victories and losses. And you have all these pieces, and then you get to a point, hopefully we all get to a point where God allows us to pull back and He says, actually, all of those pieces fit perfectly together to make this mosaic that is required for such a time as this. And so when I think about my life, I think about two parents that separated when I was 5, living back and forth with my mom and my dad, having step parents where I didn't really fit in, having God part of my life in high school but not at the center, losing our son Christian for 5 minutes in a car in San Diego, having a transformative moment, where God said, no, I no longer want to be part of your life. I want to be the epicenter of your life. Wow. To things that we've had in our marriage, all throughout struggles in business, all of it has come together. And when I think about the story of David, there were men on that battlefield that were technically on paper more equipped to do battle. They had killed men. Right. They had killed soldiers. Right. They had battled men and soldiers and armies. So when you think about it, they seemed more equipped to handle Goliath. But God chose this guy who was off killing lions and bears. And so people look at me and they say, well, what about experience in politics and experience in government? And I'm like, you don't understand. Yeah. if God wanted, somebody in the army to battle the Goliath that lives in Sacramento, there's a plethora of them, and they haven't been able to do it. He chose somebody that was off killing lions and bears because it's that skill set that you need. And so I come to the battlefield with a unique set of skills that I didn't realize were required for this season, but that He allowed me to see during this process. And when we think about the story of David, there are stories in the Bible where God has commissioned somebody to do something. Like Moses, you will lead my people out of Egypt, right? And then there are stories like David where David wasn't commissioned to God. God didn't say, now go fight Goliath. No, what He did was He prepared David in advance and gave David the space to see injustice and to be righteously angry. And He allowed David to choose to enter into the battle. And that obedience, that space that God creates for us to say, okay, send me, then unlocks what I believe to be an enormous amount of favor and covering and blessing. And so I was sitting there, not on the couch where, God kicked me up and said, you're going to be governor. It wasn't that. He allowed me to see injustice. He allowed me to see, to form righteous anger. And in the space that He allowed, I said, fine. Send me. And since then, He has just opened doorways that no man could shut. He's closed doorways that no man can open, and He's really given us a lot of favor over this process. I don't know the outcome other than each and every day, my job, my role in this, just like Noah in like picking up the hammer, the nails, and a piece of wood every single day. My job is just enter into the fight, to be ready to be used as a vessel, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been slaying. We haven't slayed Goliath yet, but we've been slaying dragons along the whole way. There's a graveyard of dragons that we've been slaying, both in the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And we're just, every day I'm honored just to be able to say, actually, that's my prayer every day. I'm just so thankful that I get to be a vessel and act in obedience to honor Him. And I know that the journey is honorable to Him. I can't wait to deliver the victory. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so powerful. When I mean, obviously I pray for you guys every day, but when I was praying this morning, I really felt the Lord say that. I felt like He said, you've already shifted California. you've already created such an impact from what you've done from beginning to end, from your yes to where we are now, that, of course, I completely believe that for the victory.
Yes.
I believe that. I believe God is shifting California. But I do feel like he was highlighting that to me. How powerful. Every battle is so powerful. Every win, every person you talk to, every door that's open, and I can feel it. I've been present in some of those meetings, and I can feel the presence of God so strongly in those meetings. It is so beyond you, right? It's so beyond us. That's how we know we're really
I think I've told you, I've had conversations with people where prior to the introduction, they tell me, this is going to be a hard nut to crack. You're not... This person, they don't get involved. They're going to be standoffish. You'll be lucky if you get a handshake at the end of this. And we go into environments, and I pray. I just pray that the Spirit move through me. I pray that God speaks through me. I'm just a vessel. And I've told you, I've sat at tables with people, and I've felt as if I am observing a conversation that's taking place outside of me being present, where I feel like I'm in a see-through encapsulated bubble, and God is moving through conversation, through interaction, just through His presence. And I have seen people shift. I've seen people... I was in Sacramento having a conversation with a pastor who has become a great friend of mine, who had endorsed another candidate prior to me arriving there that day. And we were talking, and he was asking me questions. 5 minutes into a 30-minute interview, I physically saw a shift in him. A whole demeanor change, physically and in the spirit. But we kept going. After the interview, he came up to me and said, I want to let you know something. You shook me. I'm like, I don't know how to describe what I'm feeling right now, other than the Spirit is moving. There's a shift in the environment. We started to walk out. He stopped me again and said, wait, I need to say it again. You've shook me. Those were his words. And I don't know what I'm feeling. This is a pastor, right? Spirit-filled pastor who was grappling with the fact that he had just experienced something. That's how God has been moving through this. And it's so much bigger than me. And we have, on this journey, we have inspired people to run for office who have come to us and said, hey, just so you know, I never thought I was worthy. I never thought I could. I never thought I had the ability to, but you gave me the courage and the strength, and now I'm running for school board, for council, for assembly, whatever it is. And so I know God is moving through this journey to inspire a generation of people and the church, more importantly, to use faith as a verb. And I think the church has been sleeping, and we don't use faith as a verb. A lot of Christians want to just pray and hope, and I'm like, that's not the time. We don't live in the times where you can just pray and hope. You got to actually get out and do something about it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. That is exactly what I feel like he's been saying for quite a long time, for a couple years. I've just felt this shift in believers personally, but even corporately, that God is moving and shifting and raising up, right? So we can choose to sit back and do nothing, but it's actually really uncomfortable now to do nothing. It's actually not a comfortable place to be. I think we live in an amazing country, the best country in the world. We're so blessed to live here with all the opportunity and all the things. But at the same time, it's easy to get complacent and comfortable in our own lives and want nothing to shift. I mean, honestly, and I've witnessed this firsthand. You and your family have put everything on the line to do this. I mean, it would be much more convenient for you not to do this in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You could be out on your boat. You could be enjoying whatever. But you have made a decision. You've chosen to say yes. And I think that distinction between, I know for sure God called me, I'm going to do this, or there's a need and I'm going to say yes to that, they're both equally powerful.
I think, so I have this conversation with my son Nico, who you obviously know very well. God is creative. If you think about the world that he created the colors and the animals and everything, he is the essence of creativity, right? And so we tend to think that as Christians, everything has to be prescribed for us, that we have to be called to do everything and anything. But I believe that God is also looking for us to be creative, meaning there are things we're called to do, and we need to be obedient to that. There are things we're called specifically as individuals to do, specifically as the church to do. But I also believe he's also looking as a father to say, hey, I gave you an enormous amount of talent, skill set, resources. What will you do in my name? How can you be creative in ways that you serve me? I believe he's looking for us to also say, hey, I don't feel necessarily called to do this thing, or I don't necessarily feel like, this is a very specific request, but I have identified an opportunity to honor you, to glorify you. And if nothing else, then you just know that I'm obedient, I have an obedient heart, a servant heart, and I want to honor you in some way. I got to believe that those things that we do, that we find, that we get righteously angry about and want to correct, I think it brings God great pleasure to see his children get creative with what he has given us and say, what will you do on your own for me? And so I've spent my whole life trying to tinker with, balancing the things that I feel called to do and the things that I want to create and invent on my own, just to say, look, Dad, look what I did. Look what I made with what you've given me. I hope it's honorable to you. Maybe I wasted my time. Maybe you didn't want me to do that. But my heart was in the right place. Somebody was blessed by it, and hopefully you were honored by it. And I think we need to do more of that as a church.
I love that. And I think it is that interaction, right? He's our dad. If we actually interact with him as a dad, it changes everything. And we've had Eddie and Janet Pioric, who married Richard and I at your house and my first show. And he's a father of the father's love, and talks a lot about that, like this interactive relationship we have with the Father. Of course it delights him. Like, how could it not? And I think that's so powerful. What you carry is honestly just the power of the Father's love. You're such an incredible father, which I can attest to personally. And like you said, I need to be an example to my kids. I'm raising men. I'm raising my beautiful daughter. I'm raising this next generation. But that's a message to the state. That's a message to the country. That's a message to the world, right? For good men to stand up and be fathers actually empowers the masses to step into their calling and their destiny.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we need more men to step up and fill that fatherly role in all aspects of life, not just in our own household, but especially in government. We need people that what is a father? He's a protector. He's a provider, right? And we don't have enough of those people in government, for sure, that are putting, taking into account the needs of people outside of themselves. And a father's love is unconditional. And a father delights in his children doing well, right? Think about that. Like, a father delights in his children prospering, in his children not suffering, but living in abundance. So when you think about even California and our governor role, do we have that father figure? Do we have somebody that delights in our abundance, that delights in our well-doing, that delights in us not lacking but having much? We don't have that. We actually have government officials who lack moral values and a North Star. And we are now seeing a California that is almost completely void of God, where they're separating God from school, separating him from government. And we're now living out the byproduct of a society that wants little to do with God. And we need to get back to a place our forefathers knew. We need to get back to a place where we put people in office that understand that our job is to delight in our children or the people that we care for, living in abundance. And we don't have that.
I came to give you life and life
abundantly.
Right? That's what he tells us. That's his word. Well, I know the hand of God is on you. I'm completely confident that you are the candidate that God has chosen for this race, for this victory, for a time such as this. And although I'm obviously close to what you guys are doing, I feel like the Lord has confirmed that to me over and over again. And so I just bless you. We have a part 2 coming, so make sure you turn into part 2. But I want Anthony, you can recap what you want to recap, but I'd love for you to pray us out as well. And I just want all of you to feel free to watch this again. Send it to everyone you know. Honestly, we need to vote on June 7th. We can already do the other voting that's not in person.
We'll do some housekeeping items and then I'll pray us out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So for anybody that lives in California, or if you know people that live in California, June 7th is the primary. It doesn't happen in every state, but in California we have what's called the jungle primary, which means that only 2 candidates advance past June 7th into the general election, and then in November we actually elect our officials. So it's critically important that we get out and vote June 7th. It's important that you bring family and friends, those people who are discouraged, because there are a lot of people in California, across the nation really, but definitely in California, who are discouraged. They don't want to vote. They think their vote won't matter. They're discouraged about voter integrity, so they want to stay home. We can't stay home. We have to get out. We have to vote. Our vote does matter, and we need to bring as many people as we can with us. June 7th, 2 candidates advance to the general, and then the fight really begins. And that's it'll be a competition between somebody and Gavin Newsom for the seat of governor. So get out and vote and tell everybody you know to vote. It's critically important. But I just want to encourage everybody that, we were chosen to live for such a time as this. And I believe that, a lot of Christians want God to come back, Jesus to come back now and just rescue us from this mess. But he doesn't want to come back for a broken bride. He wants to come back for a bride that is fat, a bride that is healthy. And I believe that right now it's the future of our schools, our state, our counties, our nation rests firmly on the shoulders of the church. And so I would just encourage the church to arm yourself and equip yourself for such a time as this. And let me just pray us out real fast. Father God, we come to you in prayer in Jesus' name to thank you for the opportunity that we have to even be bringing this message of hope, because it is a message of hope. Because, in the darkness, we can be the light, and we are called to be the light. And the things that are happening here in California will affect the nation, and what affects the nation will affect the world. So I just pray that your church equips itself, understands its role in this time, that we don't sit on the sidelines, but that we operate and utilize our faith as a verb and take action. And so I just pray for California, Lord. I pray for everybody in California, that we will see light overcome the darkness, that we will be an example to the rest of the nation, because so goes California, so goes the rest of the nation. And I pray that something new, revival, starts here in California, not just in the church, but it overflows into our cities, our communities, the business, the marketplace, and to government. And so I just pray for your people, and I pray for this time that we're living in, that we may see a change, Lord, and that may you be honored and glorified through all things, through the trials, the tribulations, and definitely through the victory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. That was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. The Spirit of God is moving. Jump in the river. Be part of the change. We'll see you guys soon. Make sure you turn in into part 2